Welcome to the Run Strong Run podcast, where I amplify inspiring voices from the back of the pack and loudly proclaim all runners count. Without further ado, here's this week's inspiring runner.
I'm so excited. I'm here today with Chad. His story is amazing. He went from 340-pound couch potato to marathoner. I believe it was in a very quick span of time, like in less than a year. I'll let him tell his full story. So without further ado, Chad, welcome to the Run Strong Run podcast.
Hi, Stephanie. How are you doing?
Doing great. Thank you. So you and I just recently got to meet at the California International Marathon in December of 2023, where you ran your first marathon. But take us back to the beginning. What got you started with running? Like, was there a moment that took you from like 340-pound couch potato to I'm going to be a marathoner? Like, kind of talk us through that.
Well, so I didn't initially start running. So Thanksgiving of 2022, I was at a off-road event, and some of my friends have a YouTube channel, and so just goofing off. And anyway, I ended up in their YouTube video, and part of that YouTube video was like this weird, like me just goofing off, running across the trail. But like the way the video portrayed myself, I was not very flattering. And then like a couple of days later, I tried to change an oxygen sensor on my daughter's car, and I couldn't reach it because I was too large to actually slide under the car far enough to reach it, even though it was fairly easy to reach. And then like all of this happened within like 5 days. And then I stepped on the scale for like the first time in a couple of years, probably. And yeah, that number was 340 pounds. And I was like, holy crap, I got to do something. And so I changed my diet to something fairly strict. I went with paleo because that seemed to make the most sense for me. And then I actually only started doing like 7-minute workouts, like if you've ever heard of those. And that's what I started doing. And so, it built up over time so that started about the beginning of December, and then built up over time. And went from, 7-minute workouts every other day to longer workouts, still pretty much every other day. And I stuck with that really strict paleo diet for 6-7 months. And then in July, I was at another car event, and one of my buddies was talking with me about, like, at that point I had lost probably about 60 pounds or 70, something like that. I don't remember exactly, but we were talking, and some fool dared to say that I was getting fit enough to go run a marathon, which it only took that idiot like 7 days to decide he was going to run the California International Marathon, because that coincided with the 1-year anniversary of like making this life altering decision. So my first actual run in preparation of going to CIM was on July 20th.
Wow, that's pretty awesome. So like it took was this one person to say, wow, you're getting fit enough to run a marathon. And you're like, well, maybe. So your first run's July 20th. The race is always the first Sunday of December. And actually the official CIM training kickoff is usually the beginning of August. So you started training maybe a little bit before the kickoff, but how was that first run? Did you like immediately start running and you're like, wow, this is so easy, I love it, the marathon's gonna be amazing?
Oh no. I now know that what I was doing is called jeffing, but at the time I had no idea. It was just, I'm gonna run until I can't run anymore, and then I'll walk, and then I'll run some more. And so essentially I'd run like 2 blocks and then walk up 2 blocks and then run 2 blocks. And essentially that's what I started doing. And the first time I went out for a run, I actually have it all recorded, ironically, because I was using a fitness tracker, just not a running watch. And so it was like a mile, 1.83 miles on July 20th. And I want to say that 1.83 miles probably took me 40 minutes. So
It wasn't at that point that you committed. I mean, did you look up a marathon training plan? Were you following some kind of training plan? Because I love too that you started your journey kind of like Thanksgiving 2022. You got this wake up call, several different things happen in a short span of time, and you started with just 7-minute workouts. And I think that's the important thing for people to remember. Is I think sometimes we think, oh, we need to start with doing like a 30-minute or a 60-minute workout, but even 7 minutes, and I think you said 7 minutes every other day, makes such a big difference. But so then July 20th, you go out for that 1.83 mile run. It takes you about 40 minutes. You're running and walking and just getting started in this whole running journey. So at that point, did you look up a marathon training plan, or were you, did you sign up for CIM? When did you officially sign up and start that marathon training?
One of my buddies that I know through my car community actually had run Boston several times, and I knew that. I had started talking to him about this whole idea because the person who dared to say those words was actually me. I put myself up to running a marathon on accident by
Oh.
talking to somebody else. And yeah, when I say some fool, I'm referring to myself. So I was talking with my buddy Matt and about like what I needed to do, and he recommended the Hal Higdon method training plans.
Mhm.
And I was able to just like basically pull that off of, I think there's an app and then online. And so I started following that. And initially, I was going to follow like the CIM like kickoff, but I decided I shouldn't wait because, well, I don't run. Never thought I would run. So like I probably need a little bit more time than what this calls for. So
Yeah.
ultimately, I ended up still only being about 18 weeks because at one point in time I did twist my knee while I was out elk hunting. And so I had to take like 8 days off to let that recover. So
For those people who might be listening and they want to run a marathon, but the idea of training for a marathon just seems so overwhelming. How is that for you? Like those long runs, especially because usually in a marathon training plan, you have like shorter runs throughout the week, and then usually on the weekend are the long runs. I know too, you work nights. And so how is that for you balancing one, working nights, and two, the marathon training and the long runs? Did it all just go smoothly, or how was that for you?
I mean, it was challenging. The way the way the training plan works is that, there's the short day and then like a rest day and a short day. And I'm just kind of going off of memory. Actually, I think I have my Higdon plan that I printed off on the fridge still over here. So but essentially, so I transition every week on a Wednesday because I work 7 days straight. So 7 nights I work, and then I have 7 days off. So I'd always transition my schedule, basically flip the clock. So instead of AM and PM, it's PM and AM. Is how I treat it. So, and I always would run after I woke up. So first thing in the morning, whatever morning happened to be at that point. And I guess the thing that I did is, and I didn't like, I've done a lot more research since I started doing all this, but I just kind of did what felt natural. And so, like, almost all of the running that I did was in zone two, like almost everything. Like, I didn't push myself hard, but I just made sure I kept moving. And so, and I know those early, like, I think the earliest long run was like, it's like 3 miles were the short runs, and then the long run was like a 5 mile. And so, and then it would build up. It'd be like 5 miles was the long one run one week, 6 miles the next week. Maybe it was 7, and then it'd go back to 5. And so you'd go up a mile for like 2 weeks every weekend for 2 weeks, and then you go back, and then you go back up, and just kind of so it kind of staggered it back and forth a little bit. And there's a lot of different training plans out there I know now, but just following that general guideline and keeping that zone two kind of running pace the whole time. I feel like I probably have a really good base at this point. Like today was, if you count today, my day started yesterday evening. So today was my 45th streak day of running a 5K day, at least.
That's
So
awesome.
since CIM, I don't know why I'm still doing it, but I don't know why I'm still doing a streak, not why I'm still running. Because I did sign up for CIM as soon as it was available again for next year. So I'll see you again.
I love that. So I think that's ultimately the question is, some people, when they're training for their first marathon, they say, oh, I'm one and done. But it sounds like you are definitely not one and done. I know we've kind of already talked about on socials when you and I are messaging each other back and forth, talking about like your goals for the future. But so is CIM your only marathon you have planned for 2024, or are there other races?
No, I'm going to. So there's a group called Marathon Maniacs, and the criteria to be able to join the group is like 2 marathons within 16 days or 3 within 90. And I'm going the route of doing 2 within 16 days. So I'm signed up for Eugene Marathon in Oregon, and then Beaverhead Marathon in Montana. Because my other thought slash goal is to like do a marathon in all of the Western states, maybe this year. Probably have to push it to next year.
Oh my goodness. I love this chat. It sounds like you have caught the marathon bug. I mean, and does it just like totally blow your mind when you picture back that YouTube video you saw of yourself at around Thanksgiving of 2022? Does it just blow your mind to think like that same person today is wanting to become a marathon maniac, run a marathon in all of the Western states, run 2 marathons in 16 days? Does it just blow your mind or what?
I always say that, there's list that top 5 things that you'd never do in your life. And, 18 months ago, running a marathon may have been number one, if not followed closely by getting back together with my ex-wife. But I don't know which one of those two would be top, but they'd be pretty close.
Yeah, I mean, so your story is just so inspiring. I mean, truly it shows that anyone can run a marathon. Anyone can run a marathon, and all it takes is just getting started, that one step forward. So Chad, I actually became a marathon maniac in 2016. I ran 2 marathons in one weekend. I ran one marathon on Saturday and ran one on Sunday. And so I used to refer that 2016 was my best running year, but now I want to say like 2023 was a pretty darn good year for me, running 11 marathons in 2023. And but yeah, so Marathon Maniacs, it holds a special place in my heart. So it sounds like you and I are on the same wavelength of crazy.
Apparently, because I'm also like, I have friends who are like, hey, we're doing a 55K here in like the middle of March. Are you coming? I'm like, maybe.
I mean, it's just so crazy. So you finished CIM in 2023 at about 5:15. Did you
Yes.
surprise yourself with that marathon finish time?
A little bit. I mean, I honestly did expect to be somewhere closer to that 6 hour mark. I really wasn't sure. Part of the training plan said to do a long run or run a half marathon, and I did run a half marathon, and I was like, I want to say it was two 240-ish for the half marathon that I did.
Mm-hmm.
So I figured I would be a bit slower on a marathon because it was so much longer. So I was figuring, yeah, I'd probably be pretty close to that 6 hour mark, which is part of the reason I started chatting with you when I saw your post about 6 hour marathon pacer. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna be hanging out with that gal for sure.
Yes. And so that's why I love pacing the 6 hours for CIM. I'm wearing one of my CIM shirts right now. But so many people like that 6 hours is the cutoff mark and they want to beat that 6 hour time. And so let's talk back to marathon race day. How did the race go for you? How was CIM?
I mean, as a first experience, it's probably, from what I've heard, probably one of the better ones to choose. In regards to being fairly flat, a lot of spectator support, because that energy really does carry into what you're doing. And I did take part in the Fleet Feet training program, so I was able to, like, I had that Fleet Feet VIP experience going into the morning. So I had a warming tent and a separate shuttle from the non-VIP, standard entries, I guess. So it made it a lot. I basically tried to do everything I could to set myself up for success, which I think I did pretty well in doing that. There's some ideas I got from some of the people there regarding preparations. One of the interesting things is I'm not really around a lot of people all the time, and because of my schedule and when I'm in Idaho, I'm out in the country, and I don't have any friends that are nearby that run. Actually, almost all of my friends think I'm crazy, which is fine. So all of my long runs, when I started having to do long runs where I was doing over essentially anything over a 12-mile run, I had acquired a Nathan hydration pack, and I would run with the hydration pack and with some nutrition on board and that kind of thing. So I ran CIM just like I would run a long run. So I had my full Nathan hydration pack with all of my own gels and all of that stuff, which was kind of hilarious. And I know some people had mentioned that I was a little over prepared, which I did drink almost all of the hydration pack. Actually, I did drink all of the hydration pack as well as hit every hydration station that was still up when I went rolling by. So I don't know that I was underprepared after all for myself, just because of my own experience or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. That is kind of like the unknown, especially if it's the first time running a race. The race website might state one thing about like, oh, here's our hydration we'll have offered, and here's our fueling we'll have offered.
Mhm.
Some runners who run multiple marathons will still take their own hydration and their own fueling, because you just sometimes never know. I had an experience back in November of 2023 where I ran a marathon, and they stated that they were going to have fuel out on course, and they ended up having nothing out on course. And I was,
Ooh.
not in a good place, because being out there for 6 hours with no fuel really takes a toll on your body. So I would
Oh
actually,
yeah.
I would actually say, Chad, that good for you being like, well prepared. But yes, CIM is a race that their hydration stations and their fueling, that's like on point. But I think too, the thing is, different people's bodies respond differently to different fuels. So so CIM uses goo. And so maybe
Mhm.
if you're used to using something else, you might want to still bring that with you. So what is your go-to fuel source for long runs?
I mean, I saw, like, I started following this CIM. Oh, one of the questions you asked earlier that I didn't actually answer is me getting registered for CIM was actually quite the conundrum because I was so late coming to the idea. When I finally came to the idea and figured out, basically based off of when, because I wanted to do it as close to the 1 year anniversary of making that decision to change my life essentially, as I could. And CIM really hit that like on the head. And with no knowledge of how supportive and kind of like good CIM is for like a first time runner. Anyway, I went to sign up and there was the late entries, and the late entries are a little bit more expensive than the normal entry. And so I had to delay essentially being able to buy an entry. Well, that delay actually allowed them to sell out. So I had to go through, I went through the whole transfer process, which I don't know if you're aware of how that works, but essentially at the end of October, anybody who decides that they can't make it for whatever reason, they can transfer their entry to somebody else. It costs like, I think it was $40 on the runner sign up site to make the transfer. And then anything that you were paying the transferer outside of that was on you on how to set that up, which it was really nerve wracking because I had made an agreement very early in, I want to say it was in late August. So shortly after I realized I was going to have to do it this way, I had made an agreement with somebody that was part of the first timers program. Oh, that was the other thing I got from CIM, was that I was in the first timers program as well. So I had like I said, I did everything I could to give myself extra support. And so this other lady that was in this first timers program posted that she wasn't going to make it, couldn't manage the training between her work schedule and life and whatnot like that. And so we had like a verbal agreement, but I had to wait 2 months to be able to actually make the transfer to actually officially be entered into CIM. And it was kind of nerve wracking to not know and to do all of this training, not knowing whether I was ever actually going to have a bib essentially to make the run. So it was an interesting process in that. So I don't know how they could handle that better. I think that oh, you can't do it until the end of October thing is like kind of rough, especially if you know early on, like she did, that she wasn't gonna do it. But anyway, that's
That's a good question. I hadn't really thought about that, but that is interesting that they have that the transfer window opens up so late, because you're right, that must have been difficult. You're following this marathon training plan, hoping to run the California International Marathon. You have a verbal agreement from this person, but it's not like, hasn't been official until really basically a month from race day. And so yeah, I can imagine that's really nerve-wracking. But I also love that you really set yourself up for success for your first marathon. It sounds like you were following your marathon training plan to a T. It sounds like you were like, I'm going to sign up for the first timer program, which for those people who are watching or listening, if you don't know, the California International Marathon has a first timer program, and it's free to join. You register for the race and you can join this first timer program. I'm actually a mentor in the first timer program. There's a Facebook group. And so it's for people who are running their very first marathon at CIM. And then when you cross the marathon finish line, you actually get an additional medal that says my first 26.2 in addition to your finisher medal. And so I just love that CIM is supporting these first time marathoners. There's like monthly sessions, like information sessions about like fueling or training or tapering and all these things that are new to you when you're training for your first marathon. So I love that. And you also did the Fleet Feet VIP program or Fleet Feet training. Would you, now that you're signed up for CIM 2024, are you opting in to do Fleet Feet again?
Fortunately, I have some time to decide that. And it all depends on what essentially, it kind of depends on what I do for accommodations, because the way I had myself set up with accommodations didn't work the greatest, because I chose to get a hotel in Folsom for my accommodations. And with that Fleet Feet training program, VIP shuttle and stuff, that all started at the finish line area down by where the expo is and all that stuff. And so if you know the orientation of how Sacramento is set up, I basically set it up so that I had to go from the airport past the expo and the finish line to my hotel, and really it was a lot of extra driving for nothing.
Yeah.
During all of that, because then when I finished the race, I had to go find my car, drive to the hotel that was 25 miles up the highway, to then turn around and come back by the finish line to go to the airport.
Yeah, absolutely. I always recommend that people stay near the finish line and not stay up at the starting line in Folsom. So again, if you're listening, you're not familiar with the California International Marathon, it's a point-to-point course. So the finishes at the state capitol building in Sacramento, and we start up in Folsom. It's a net downhill for CIM. Net downhill does not mean there's any uphills. I think that also throws people off. I know earlier you mentioned it's mostly flat, but we do gain about, I want to say it's about 800 feet of elevation. I could be wrong on that, but yeah, there are some.
No, there's no way it's 800.
Okay, maybe 500.
Maybe. I know that when I was running it, like in Idaho, I have hills that are 150 feet of elevation gain in like an eighth of a mile, and I run those hills. So like I'm hearing, oh, there's hills on the CIM. I'm prepared for this. So like one of the things that you hear is, when you go out, it's the first like 8 miles, it's hilly. And so I took it pretty conservatively, not realizing that they were California hills, not Idaho hills. And
Yes.
so,
I mean, I live pretty close to Sacramento. I live in the Sacramento Valley. So in my city, there are no hills. Like it's flat. And I mean, like my only hill is when I go up and over the bridge crossing the river. So you as an Idaho resident, yeah, you probably have a lot more hills than we do. So when we're facing, less than 1,000 feet of elevation across 26.2 miles, we're like, what is this?
yeah, and I'm like, oh, I do hill repeats to on, like I said, they're 150 foot of elevation gain in an eighth of a mile or whatever, and it gets the heart rate up for sure.
I'm looking this up right now about the total elevation of CIM. Oh wait, well, so it says the definition here says small rolling hills the whole way, amounting to about 250 feet of gain total, but that cannot be right.
Well, that sounds about right to me.
Oh, max elevation. Okay. Elevation gain, 663 feet. This is according to findmymarathon.com. So 663 feet of elevation gain, 1,003 feet of elevation loss.
Right. How many hills though?
How many hills? Well, so it's like several different like small hills, but people who don't run hills, and they come to CIM, they're like, what is this? Like, I think the first hill's like, yeah, they're within the first couple miles.
Oh yeah, that right-hand turn up that's like the one hill that I was like, ooh, this is an okay hill. And then the rest of it's like, this is like a flat road in Idaho.
Yeah. But usually in my 6-hour pacing group, it's very common for me to hear people around me say, oh, when are these hills ever going to be over with? So yeah, people, when they hear net downhill,
it all varies by experience. Absolutely.
And when people hear net downhill, they think, oh, this is a downhill marathon. It's not a downhill marathon. There are rollers in there, but honestly, I prefer rollers. I don't like a flat course. Like we have another marathon here in California called the Modesto Marathon that's in more central California, and it's flat, but I prefer a more like roller because it provides, like, I'm using different muscles in my body. I guess different muscles, different breaks. So I like the rollers. That's why CIM is one of my favorite marathons. So
Yeah, a lot of my training runs are on those. I mean, they're not rollers, they're those much steeper hills, but I would prefer going on those than going like down the highway on the really flat stuff. So
yeah,
just because it does exactly what you're saying, there's a different strains when you're going up and slightly down, and so it pulls differently.
yeah, absolutely. Pacers. So at CIM in the starting corrals, CIM, it's a self-seated corrals, which means you line yourself up where you think you are going to be running about the pace. Did you line up near a particular pace group? Did you kind of follow a pace group during the marathon? Because you were definitely in front of me. I never saw you out on course. I only saw you at the finish line.
So I did. I lined up with the 520 pace group, and I believe it was Randy and
Rodney.
yeah, and I actually had thought I was going to be pacing with Julia at the 505 group.
Mm-hmm.
Can't remember what. But I started at the 520 group because in one of the what are those pre-runs called, or shakedown runs? One of the shakedown runs. I can't remember which one because I did like three of them there. And anyway, just because it was like, well, these are simple little runs, and I can treat these like what they are, which is just something to get moving. And during one of those, I ended up connecting with a gal who she was being left behind essentially on these shakedown runs. And so I stayed with her to finish up. I think it was the BPN one. And I stayed with her for the shakedown run. And so I met up with her at the 520 pace group to run with her for a while, because just I guess being cordial slash friendly or whatever. And ultimately I did, after the first couple of miles, I did leave her behind. Unfortunately, she finished after you, but that's actually why you saw me at the finish line, is I was waiting for her
Oh, okay.
to make sure she made it across the line and whatnot. So, because I don't know, just she reminded me a lot of my mother. So, just her attitude and that kind of thing, she reminded me a lot of my mother. So, I watched for her for that reason. But so yeah, that's why you saw me at the finish line hanging out. Is I was waiting for her to come.
I love that.
And then I also heard about the medals running out, and so I was also like, I think I loaned her my medal because I did finish before they ran out, and I loaned her my medal so that she could get her finish line photo with the medal. So.
I love that. I love your heart for others. Like, you just seem like such a great person. And Chad, I can foresee in the future perhaps you becoming a marathon pacer. Your story is so inspiring, and you already have all these marathons on deck. So often the question people ask me is, how do you become a marathon pacer? So I first got started with Beast Pacing. So if you just go to beastpacing.com, and there's a little form there that you can fill out to become a pacer. And usually you pace marathons at least 20 minutes slower of the average of your last 3 marathon times. If you're a half marathon, it's 15 minutes slower of the average of your last 3 half marathon finish times. But I think I only ran maybe 6 or 7 marathons before I first paced my first marathon. So I've now run 37 full marathons to date, and I now only basically pace marathons. Rarely am I racing marathons anymore, but I also now pace with a group called On Pace Race, and some marathons rely on local run groups for pacers. But Chad, do you think pacing might be in your future?
It could be. I mean, I don't think I'm ever gonna qualify for Olympic trials. It'd be really awesome to qualify for Boston, but I suspect the only way I'm getting to Boston is with a lot of donations. So, I mean, it's certainly a possibility. And like I said, I can't say no to what the future holds anymore, because this was definitely not something I ever saw coming until July.
Yeah. So how life-changing has running this marathon been for you? Like, I know probably there's been the physical change of that fitness aspect of running a marathon, but what other changes have you seen with this newfound love of long distance running?
A lot more sense of like essentially carpe diem. And if I need to pursue the things that I feel are worth doing, because in the end, that's the only way that I'm going to be satisfied with the life I'm living. And that reflects in career as well as all the other aspects of how life is. So
I love that. Carpe diem, seize the day, right? That's
Yep.
what is someone who's listening or watching and they want to run their first marathon, but they're so nervous. They're afraid. They're afraid of being too slow. They're afraid of being in the back of the pack. They don't know exactly how to get started. What advice would you give to that person?
The first step is putting one foot in front of the other. And it didn't matter. I'm trying to remember the gal's name that I paced with at that shakedown round. I have her phone number. I could actually look it up real quick. But it didn't matter if she finished the marathon within the cutoff time. It was that she finished, and she didn't finish within the cutoff time, but that she still finished a marathon, and that's still amazing. And so it doesn't matter how fast or slow you are. If you finish, you finish. And if that's, I saw the person who finished last, like as I was leaving, I actually saw them still on course coming around the last quarter mile or whatever. And I still cheered them on. That's the thing, is that the only person you have to fear is yourself. In this community, I don't see anybody who shames anybody for their speed.
Mm-hmm. And I love that. Yes. Someone is usually that's their worst enemy. You're stopping yourself, and just put one foot in front of the other. Just start, just go, just do it. I love what my friend Sandra, her motto is what if I'm slow? And then she says, but my darling, what if you finish? And I just love that. Chad, your story is so inspiring, how in a year you went from daring yourself to make a change in your life, knowing that a change needed to happen for your own health, for your family, and then running a marathon. And now you're unstoppable. Like, I cannot wait to continue to follow your journey of becoming a marathon maniac, running a marathon in all Western states. Thank you so much for being on here and sharing your story. I so appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you. First time I've really talked to somebody about what happened and how it went.
Well, there's power in sharing our stories, and I know without a doubt that you have inspired others. So continue inspiring.
I'll try.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the Run Strong Run podcast. You can reach out to me on Instagram at Run Strong Run or through my website at runstrongrun.com. You can support this podcast through a rating, review, or share. Until next time, run strong and run happy.